Welcome to the Grueling Truths Inside Boxing Weekly Show. I'm your host, Mike Goodpaster. Right now I want to welcome in my co-host, Jeremiah Preisser.
Good afternoon, everybody. Glad to be here. Glad to be on. Always excited to be here. Welcome to all our listeners.
All right. I don't think we got much to review from last week, do we?
No, I mean, the biggest storyline was the Jamel Herring versus Denis Shafikov fight, and ESPN tried to hype it up a bit by making a real nice video of what Herring has been through, with his 2 tours and as a Marine in the Middle East. And unfortunately, Shafikov wasn't having any of it and gave Herring a nice little beatdown.
All right, but we do have a fight to preview, light heavyweight title fight between Sergey Kovalev and Eubank Jr. Chilemba's 24-3, 10 knockouts, which worries me right there. Lost to guys like Tony Bellew. Actually lost his last fight to Alvarez. Heck, probably his biggest name that he beat was Edison Moreno, which was a few years at a weight class too high. I think he beat Vasily Lepkin also. Do you think Chilemba has a chance in hell?
A chance at all? I think Chilemba's a pretty good fighter. I mean, he's rated number 7th by the ring, and I think deservedly so. I mean, he lost to Alvarez, but that fight was close. I mean, Chilemba is no easy out for anybody, or at least he's proven that. I mean, I remember watching him back on ESPN when he fought like Maxim Vlasov, which is a real nice fight between 2 crafty guys. Chilemba's a good fighter. He's not somebody that you hit cleanly very often. So I expect Kovalev to take a little while to figure him out. But, so long as Kovalev stays on the jab, stays patient, which he has been lately, I think he becomes the first to stop Chilemba. He's just got to stay on that body tack, too. But I think it's for what is essentially a stay-busy fight, I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, I think it'll be better than Andre Ward's competition for his stay-busy fight. My only problem with Chilemba is I just don't think he's got enough power to keep Kovalev off of him in the long run.
No, I agree. I see Chilemba fighting a mostly defensive battle against Kovalev. And, that will only, again, I think that'll only work for so long. Kovalev's going to stay on the jabs, hopefully stay to the body. But, yeah, I agree. But, hey, as a number 7th ranked guy, you can't ask for much better, It's a nice little homecoming for Kovalev, too, as he's taking this fight in Russia.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the crowd is, what the atmosphere is in the arena.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what Kovalev's popularity is out there. But he's pretty big time in the U.S., at least, from where he came from. And, seeing many Russian fights lately, the crowd's been pretty good. Like I said in the podcast before, they've kind of, the soccer atmosphere, the soccer fan atmosphere that you get in the U.K., that's starting to permeate into Russia. And I think it'll be pretty loud, and I think Chilemba probably be, I don't know how mentally tough he is, but I think it's going to be a little more daunting to overcome not only Kovalev's power, but a loud Russian crowd.
Yeah, and it sets up, usually I cheer for the underdog, but in this, I'm not going to, because I really want to see Kovalev and Ward and see what'll happen there November the 19th.
Yeah, I'm with you. A lot of times I root for the underdog too, but Kovalev I'm a pretty big fan of. And, him versus Ward, that settles some things. I mean, potentially the winner could be pound for pound number 1. But, yeah, Ward's excellent. Kovalev's excellent. Can't wait for that fight.
Yeah, that will be a great fight. Since it doesn't look like we're going to get Triple G and Canelo this year. I would say the biggest story, I think, to me, was Alexander Povetkin. He was slated to challenge Deontay Wilder for the Americans' WBC Heavyweight Championship in May. Fight was called off because of VADA, which is the Voluntary Anti-Doping Association. Random tests found traces of substance, which was banned. But they came out and ruled that Povetkin is innocent of any wrongdoing in its eyes. It stated that certain trace amounts of meldonium are permitted in tests between January and October 1st of this year. But beyond that, none will be allowed. But basically they're saying he was fine. They said Povetkin's samples apparently fall within what they categorize as acceptable. So what do you think? Does that mean Povetkin gets the next shot at Wilder after Chris Arreola? And
I do.
What do you think this does? I mean,
okay, so I think the WBC will rule in Povetkin's favor because I think the science has ruled in Povetkin's favor. Now, initially, like a lot of people, especially Americans, we hear of doping and we make that association with Russia, especially with their state-sponsored doping, and all those articles that were run by big-time newspapers such as the New York Times. So I think a lot of us were quick to condemn Povetkin. But I looked into this a little bit more, and I think I've got some interesting things to note. Maybe I can educate our listeners. So what happened was Povetkin, he had what I wouldn't call a failure. He tested positive for meldonium in 1 in 6 tests. And a lot of people think, well, that's a little bit odd. And even Dan Raphael, he was like, oh, well, obviously Povetkin was using on that certain day when he got busted. So when I looked more into meldonium and the effects that it has, this is what I've come across. So meldonium wasn't well understood when it was put on the banned substances list by WADA. They were still in the process of researching, and they didn't understand the excretion times for meldonium, how long it would take to get out of your body. And so after a little bit of testing and all the information that I could pull up, meldonium seems to stay in your system. Of course, this all depends on a variety of factors, like your physiological state, whether your hydration levels. There are many factors that play into this. But meldonium can stay in your system for many months. And this is exactly why WADA has pushed back the timeline to October 1st, because lots of Eastern European athletes have been using this stuff for many years. And when Povetkin had a positive test, so up until about March or April, I believe, WADA said that it is okay, and they might have pushed this amount back to October 1st. They said it is okay to have at least 1 microgram of meldonium in your system for a test. Povetkin had a mere 70 nanograms in his system. So when Povetkin and his promoter Rubinsky were saying, no, he took this last year, the evidence seems to indicate that he's correct because there's so little of it in his system. And one thing about meldonium is it has these odd excretion times. So again, this thing, it could pop into your system at any given point until it's finally clear. And again, this all depends on a variety of factors. And when they've done studies, some people have had more at certain times, some people have had less. So it's not real consistent. So again, the evidence seems to weigh in Povetkin's favor that he actually did do it last year and that he is essentially a clean fighter.
So do you think that Povetkin will get a shot at Wilder next then? Or do you think Wilder will go somewhere else and, after second thought, not go to Russia?
I do think that – I'm not sure if it'll be held in Russia. I mean, Rubinsky will win the purse bid, and it may go back to Russia. I think Wilder might have second thoughts about that. But I think the WBC is going to rule in Povetkin's favor because I think that's what the science indicates. And I think Povetkin will then become the mandatory. And I'm hoping that we get the fight. I mean, with boxing, so many things are uncertain. But Wilder showed, that he was willing to go to Russia. He was willing to fight him. I think it was a bit premature to just kind of up and leave. But I do think the fight will happen.
All right. Now, I know you are the Grueling Truth's English boxing expert. Canelo Alvarez announced that he's going to fight WBO super welterweight champion Liam Smith. Give us the rundown on Smith. Does he have a chance? Is this fight over? I mean, is this just basically them cashing out, taking an easy fight while waiting on Golovkin next year sometime?
I think this is an effort to save face by Canelo and his promoter Golden Boy. I think what happened was there was so much backlash because they refused to fight Golovkin and they gave up their title that, as I noted before, Canelo was in excellent shape for that time of the year. Typically he doesn't do that. He takes a little time off, goes a little four-wheeling, ATVs, whatever. But I think Golden Boy encouraged him to stay in shape so they could move down to 154 and show the boxing world that, hey, I'm not really a middleweight, even though I consider 154 pounders essentially middleweights anyways. I mean, but what Canelo did was they selected the weakest title holder at 154, and Smith, I've seen him fight 3-4 times. I think he's a good fighter, but is he world class? I mean, it's odd because he holds the title, what people would call a world title, but he hasn't shown anything against anybody of substance. From what I've seen, he looks like a good fighter. He comes forward. He's got a high guard. He fights a lot like his brothers, and that's what I find cool about Liam Smith and Stephen Smith and Callum Smith. They're 4 fighting brothers, and they're all good pros. But a lot of them fight in a similar manner. They come at you with a high guard. They block a lot of punches. Don't move their head really well. But they've got good pop. Liam and Callum seem to be the biggest punchers of the family. They like to go to the body. But unfortunately, Liam Smith hasn't shown anything at the world level. All of his opponents, all of his title defenses have been fringe kind of guys, top 30, top 40 guys. Like the last guy he beat, I forget what his name is, Radovich or something like that.
Yeah.
He's like 30-1, so a nice shiny record. But in his only step up, he was stopped by Felix Sturm. And Sturm doesn't really have great power. He's a decent puncher at best. But, yeah, so that's Liam's crowning achievement is stopping this guy in 2 rounds. I think so long as he comes forward and he goes after Canelo, he may make the fight a bit more exciting than we expect. But I just don't see this guy as a pound-for-pound kind of guy. Canelo is, at least with his level of opposition, and I think Canelo stops him. It's a fight to save face. It's an okay fight, but I don't think that it's really anything anybody wants to see.
Yeah, hopefully they don't try to put it on pay-per-view.
No, and initially I heard that they would, but I've also heard that they're backtracking from that a bit. And, I hope that they stick with that because Liam doesn't really have I believe his promoter is Frank Warren. And, you come across a lot of British fighters, even today, like Josh Warrington, who have huge followings, and a lot of them are passionate fans. But Liam, oddly, doesn't seem to have a big following. And I'm not sure if that's because he hasn't proven much or what. But, if it was Billy Joe Saunders or Chris Eubank, I suspect that big crowds would come out. But against Liam, I don't really expect that. And for Americans, we just view this as a duck, and again, an effort to save face. Yeah.
All right, we'll switch gears again. We go to Anthony Joshua, who defended his title a couple weeks ago. He talked about fighting Joseph Parker, which we both said would be a good fight, very interesting. But Barry Hearn came out this week and said he would like for him to fight Berman Stavern, who in his last fight struggled to beat journeyman trial horse Derek Rossi in a decision. What do you think about Stavern getting a title shot at Joshua?
Yeah, like you said, I think we were hoping for Parker. Because Parker he's an up-and-comer as well. He hasn't lost a fight. He looked okay against Takam, who is, not a top 10 guy, very close.
A solid fighter.
Yeah, Takam has done well against everybody. Povetkin, Mike Perez, he's a good fighter. So that was the more intriguing matchup. I have question marks regarding Stavern. As you said, he struggled in his last outing against Rossi, who's essentially a journeyman. And
he pretty much got shut out by Wilder. He wasn't skilled enough to get inside the long reach.
No, he didn't do much at all against Wilder. He landed very, very few clean punches. He didn't know how to cut off the ring. That's not something I think he'll have to know how to do against Joshua. But yeah, he just looked completely outclassed against the best fighter that he was in against. Not only that, Stavern's best wins are against Chris Areola, who Wilder's fighting. And while Areola, he's okay, but if you're resting your hat on back-to-back wins over Chris Areola, you can see why I have some question marks. I see, granted this fight takes place, and it's a solid fight. Stavern may still be a top 10 heavyweight based on his his recent performances, or at least that he hung around against Wilder. I mean, he wasn't stopped. He was the only guy who hasn't been knocked out by Wilder, which is, I guess, saying something in itself. But I have question marks regarding Stavern. If they fight, I think it's a good step up for Joshua, as Stavern, with his chin, looks as if he can give Joshua some rounds, maybe some shaky moments. I don't know. I guess it's a step up, and that's good enough. And I'm glad to see Joshua staying active.
Yeah, and it's going to be a lot better than Prince Charles Martin and the last guy fought, which I can't even remember his name, and it was only a couple weeks ago.
Dominic Brazil.
There you go. The bad thing is Charles Martin was so bad I'll never forget his name.
Yeah, he's etched his name in boxing history.
Yeah, in infamy. But we will go to Triple G and Chris Eubank Jr. I know you've been talking about that a lot over the last 2 weeks. Still not signed. Any new news on that?
Well, everybody's making something of Golovkin's Twitter post where he said, "Hey, he's trolling Eubank a little bit, saying, 'Hey, did you forget your pen?'" But Eubank retorted quickly. He's saying, "Hey, as soon as I get the contract, it's going to be signed." So I think we can just go ahead and look forward to that fight. I don't think Eubank is going to miss his opportunity, especially like $4 million US. This kid's getting paid well for a fight, and that's one thing I sort of admire about K2. I mean, they're willing to bend a little bit if they have to get some fights. He's getting €3 million, which is, I can't see why Eubank would pass that opportunity up at this moment. I mean, I don't think he'd even get that against Saunders, who is his biggest domestic challenge and who people know pretty well. But like we said before, I don't think Eubank is ready for that. Kid leaves his chin up in the air. But I'm surprised at how many people are actually giving Eubank some sort of chance here.
Well, I think that if you look at all the people in that division, I mean, he's one of the few guys that even you could even remotely see coming out with a win.
Yeah, I've mentioned this in the past. I know some hardcore boxing fans, and they're like, couldn't Golovkin have gotten anybody better? And, we would all like to see that. We would have all preferred to see Saunders or especially Canelo. But Eubank might be the best option at the moment. I mean, Andy Lee, what has he done lately? He's had a draw against Quillen, just lost against Saunders. Hasn't really looked all that special. Never really has. With Saunders and Canelo refusing to negotiate. Who else is up there? Peter Quillen, who looks like he's making the jump to 168. Danny Jacobs, who's fighting Mora for no real reason. I mean, who else is up there? I mean, David Lemieux already had that one. The only other person who Golovkin, the only other person who might pose some interest is the Georgian guy. I forget his name right now, but aside from that, Chris Eubank really looks like the best option. I think it's worth noting that Chris Eubank did perform pretty admirably against Billy Joe Saunders, who is a top 5 middleweight. I mean, that fight was close. Saunders outboxed him fairly clearly in the early going, but Eubank came on late and made it pretty close. So, I mean, he looks like he's progressing.
Eubank's learned a lot since then, I would imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of the British friends that I have, they would favor Eubank in a rematch.
I wouldn't mind seeing Canelo fighting Chris Eubank.
No, I think that'd be an interesting fight.
I'm not completely sold on Canelo, never have been.
No, me neither. I think I like Canelo, and this whole Golovkin situation has been unfortunate. But Canelo doesn't seem like a bad guy, and he's taken on some tough challenges. But I'm not sold on him either. I mean, most of his best work has been against light punchers like Trout and Lara, and those fights were close. A lot of people thought that Lara won.
Yeah, and they threw him in a year or two too soon with Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah, they did. He had the wrong strategy anyways. I think if that fight were to come off again, I think Canelo would do a bit better, because I remember in that fight I was thinking, who developed this fucking strategy? I mean, he sat there and boxed with Mayweather, and he basically
just followed him around and did whatever Mayweather wanted him to do.
Yeah, he looked like he was 20, 30 pounds bigger. I mean, if you got that sort of size advantage, you got to press it. But, I mean, Canelo's taken on some good opposition, especially for his age. But yeah, I think not only would Chris Eubank Jr. be a solid matchup, I think a Golden Boy fighter and David Lemieux would be a solid matchup.
Yeah, because Canelo really hasn't fought much lately. I mean, Amir Khan is a solid welterweight, but he has no jaw.
Yeah, keyword welterweight.
Yeah. And they didn't fight that at welterweight, and we all know that Canelo's pretty much a cruiserweight when he fights anyways.
Yeah.
Now, it brings me to a fight I want to see. I don't know if it's just a rumor or not, but I still want to see Manny Pacquiao and Adrian Broner.
I think a lot of Pacquiao fans want to see that because it'll be another ass whooping. I mean, Broner hasn't shown that he's world class. I mean, I think he was the number one guy. He was never the man. He's never been the lineal champion of any division he's been in. But yeah, I think a lot of Pacquiao fans wouldn't mind it because Broner's getting an ass whooping. If they sign the contract, Broner is going to get beat up. I mean, he could barely beat Paulie Malignaggi at 147. And we saw what Porter, who's a top 5 welterweight, did with Malignaggi. He went in there and wrecked him. But yeah, I'm still not sure if that fight's coming off or not. I haven't heard anything official from Pacquiao's side. You know, I heard Arum was setting up a date like October 12th or whatnot. But I've also heard from someone close to Pacquiao said that, well, that's just Bob Arum saying this. You know, there's nothing official. But, I mean, Pacquiao can hang him up and be fine. I mean, Broner really doesn't add much to his legacy. But, hey.
Yeah, but it sure would be fun to watch Broner get his ass kicked again.
Yeah, for the sheer fact of that, it wouldn't be so bad.
To me, that's a great fight. All right, now we're going to finish up with this. We're in basically a presidential season, you know, where we're electing. Basically, if these were boxers, this would be like a heavyweight title fight between Prince Charles Martin and Bruce Seldon. They both suck. You can't win either way, and there's no reason even to watch it, and it's going to be a freaking car wreck. But the thing that stood out to me is this. Would you have a presidential candidate speaking well of Don King? I don't know if you heard this or not, but yesterday he was in Cincinnati, my neck of the woods, and he's talking about Big Don King and what a great man Big Don is and all the great things Big Don's done, and he wants Big Don to speak at the Republican National Convention. What's your take on Big Don King?
Well, I mean, geez, Don King's infamous for all the wrong reasons. Well, except for, I don't know. I mean, to Don King's credit, he did sort of embrace this sort of American ideal where, you know, everybody gets a second chance. And I think people like that about him, you know, and he kind of made his own way, which was pretty cool.
But I mean, he did beat a man to death with these bare hands.
Exactly. And not only that, I mean, he's well known for ripping guys off. You know, and I heard that Mike Tyson also supported Donald Trump, but they tried to get him to speak at the Republican convention and couldn't get him to do so. Apparently he's been rejected by a number of people, even though they support him. And I fear that I'm not sure what that's about. I really don't. But, you know, one thing that I've noticed is Golden Boy, for instance, Oscar De La Hoya, he said that he's golfed with Donald Trump before. And Donald Trump is a well-known boxing fan. I think one of the McCallum James Toney fights was held at the Trump Plaza.
Well, they had a bunch of them. I mean, Foreman and Holyfield was at the Trump Taj Mahal, I believe, wasn't it? Or was that Atlantic City Convention Center?
I can't even remember. But this
I know
is my
there was
thing.
some fights at the Trump Taj Mahal before it went under.
Yeah, and I mean, Donald Trump is a big fan of Gennady Golovkin. I mean, he was in the locker room greeting him.
Yeah, let's face it, though. I mean, people that vote for Donald Trump are just people that really hate Hillary Clinton and don't want her to be president. And people that vote for Donald Trump are people that really hate Hillary Clinton and don't want her to be the president.
Yeah.
Because there's no way you could actually vote for either one of these dumbasses with a clear conscience.
Yeah, we're at a low point, but I think the American people have earned it. When you get confined to these, when you're letting the parties pick, well, in fact, I actually don't think the Republicans picked Donald Trump. I in a way, I think that was the people. And I could elaborate on that a little further, but I just wanted to touch on something real quick. So Trump is obviously a big boxing fan. And, Mike Tyson supports him. Oscar De La Hoya has played golf with him. If this was me, I think if one of these guys had the foresight to see what potential that has, I mean, potentially the next president of the United States is a big boxing fan. If you wanted to make big changes, there might be a chance that you could be like, hey, Donald, can you help us getting a central commission? Can you help us with this? Can you help us with that? I mean, even if you don't agree with his policies. I mean, I've got liberal friends. I've got conservative friends. I'm not an ideologue. I get along with everybody. But if it was me and I was a friend of Donald Trump, I would rub elbows with the guy and try to get something done. I would try to fix up the sport.
Yeah, but unfortunately, if he's going to be the president, that's probably not the thing you should be worrying about.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, with these two assholes, it doesn't really matter. I'm a libertarian, and I'm asking for my money back for my libertarian membership every year because they put Gary Johnson and Bill Weld up there, and I'm not a dumbass. Those are two Republicans.
Yeah.
And when Gary Johnson throws up that, well, I like Hillary Clinton. She's nice. I mean, come on. She's a good public servant. Oh, Jesus. I'll tell you what. This is the thing. The only place Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton should both be is probably in jail.
Yeah, some of the supporters are a little odd. I mean, I don't like when people are so firm in their political stances that they can't budge or they can't see. Well,
and it's not a political stance; it's with a party.
Yeah, right. Right. Well,
and there's no difference between the parties anymore. I'm telling you, this is Prince Charles Martin against Bruce Seldon. Who do you think wins in a fight between Prince Charles Martin and Bruce Seldon?
I'm going with Seldon.
Me too.
I think Seldon's right hand gets him.
Yeah, he could punch a little bit, but he got a little bit scared in big situations.
Yeah, well, Martin seemed a little scared in his big situation too. So.
Yeah, but I mean, Bruce Seldon really, I bet he wet himself a little bit right before that fight started. But I still have yet to see him get hit by a Tyson punch too, I think.
Yeah, still waiting on that footage to appear.
The wind knocked his ass out. But all right, so next week we will have a heavyweight title fight to preview, I believe. I believe next weekend is Deontay Wilder and Chris Arreola.
Yep. Yeah, I think.
16.
Yeah, I think there are a number of.
Yeah, I think Rigondeaux fights next week in England too, doesn't he?
Rigondeaux. Yeah, he's fighting Jazza Dickens. What a fight! We were all clamoring for that.
I know. I was hoping he'd fight Charles Dickens for years.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what Rigondeaux's doing with his career, honestly. I mean, he looks to be he's one of the best amateurs ever. I mean, I think he won 2 gold medals. He's looked really good as a pro. I mean,
and Max Kellerman loves him like it's his mom.
Yeah, well, Kellerman's always kind of had a thing for pure boxers. I mean, he's a massive Pernell Whitaker fan, and I liked Whitaker myself. I mean, I like Rigondeaux too, but at his age, he's just not getting it done. Ever since he fought Donaire, it's been a bunch of no-hopers.
Yeah.
But
well,
there is
just kind of cashing in.
Yeah, but there is I actually think there are a number of good fights on next weekend. A guy I'm going to make here soon. I'm about finished with my article, but this guy Sergey Lipinets, he's fighting Walter Castillo on ESPN. I think Lipinets is a damn good prospect. I mean, he's 27 years old, so he started a bit late, but he was a world-class kickboxer before moving into boxing. This guy only has 9 fights, but he looks like a serious contender already.
Well, and 27 today is not what 27 was 20 or 30 years ago.
Right. Yeah, and I'm sure there are a number of factors to that. But yeah, Lipinets, he's been like a lot of Eastern European guys, where he's not dealing with fodder. He's not. A lot of these American guys, if there's one thing I have against them, it's they're taking too many fights that aren't doing anything for them. And Lipinets is not like that. I mean, Walter Castillo was in an IBF title eliminator just last year. So this is a guy who's on the fringes, and Lipinets is already fighting him in his 10th fight. The kid looks good. I like what I see out of him. And he added James Buddy McGirt as a trainer. But also on that Deontay Wilder, Chris Arreola undercard is Sammy Vasquez versus Felix Diaz, which I think is an interesting fight.
Yeah.
Vasquez is a guy who
we'll have more boxing to watch next weekend, is what you're telling me, as opposed to this weekend. Really, this weekend, the Kovalev fight, I believe. Is that a Monday night?
Where is that? Yeah, it's Monday. Monday, yep.
going to screw me up. I better set my DVR now or I'll forget about the fight on a Monday night. They ain't been fights on Monday nights and stuff since the 90s.
yeah, not much of that anymore.
But, all right, well, we'll go ahead and wrap up this week's show. What's your next article on thegruelingtruth.net going to be? I think you just told us, but.
No. I'm still in the process of conjuring up something. I've been working on a number.
Well, we do have a Willie Pep article that you wrote that'll be coming out tomorrow.
Yeah. That's one I quite enjoyed. Because I'm trying to make this comprehensive series of the best defensive fighters ever. I'm sick of seeing these lists on Bleacher Report, who I think is backed by ESPN. Bleacher Report has some of the shittiest lists.
I know. They'll put guys on there that are just really.
Yeah. I mean, and some of their boxing lists are terrible. And this is how I came up with the series, actually, because I looked at some of their lists, like best defense fighters ever, and I'm like, what is going on here? Not only that, they don't really give you much information of the guy. They just kind of throw some stats out there, and it's vague. It's like one or two paragraphs. I didn't want to write biographies. I didn't want to pen something up that took a long time to read. I just want to get up a brief overview of a guy and give this comprehensive series. I'm going to have a ton of fighters, probably 20, 30, 40. It's going to be big. It's just a matter of getting on it.
Yeah, so this week we will have your first two up. Who was the second fighter on that?
Of the defensive series?
Yeah.
It's Nicolino Locci.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Locci's a fantastic fighter.
So we'll get both of those up over the next few days if you want to read Jeremiah's articles on thegruelingtruth.net. Also, later on tonight, we will have the Gridarmo Super Bowl Trivia Show, and we'll have former Pittsburgh Steeler Dwight Stone. Next week, ahead of time, at Monday night, we'll have the CFL Pick'em Show with myself, Brian Schmidt, former four-time CFL Grey Cup winner. Robert Drummond will be on. Plus, we'll have a special guest. We'll have former Winnipeg Blue Bomber, CFL Hall of Fame quarterback Dieter Brock. He will be on the Pick'em Show with us also. Make sure you check out the Rouge, White, and Blue. That's Oz Davis and Joe Pritchard's CFL show on Wednesday morning. Also, we'll have a special guest. We'll have a USFL Legends show next Wednesday with myself. I'll be interviewing former Michigan Panther, Oakland Invader wide receiver, and then later on Minnesota Viking wide receiver Anthony Carter, who played maybe the greatest game any wide receiver's ever played in a playoff game in 1987 when he basically single-handedly wrecked Joe Montana and Steve Young in the 49ers' 13-2 season. So we'll have Anthony Carter next week also. Any final words, Jeremiah?
I do, and these aren't the final words that I would prefer to say, but one of our writers over at True School Boxing, one of the founders, Travis Fleming, he passed away. He passed away this morning. Unfortunately, he ended his own life due to severe depression, and, I just want to say R.I.P.
Well, definitely everybody's thoughts and prayers are with him. So that's a heck of a way to end the show. But
Yeah, it is. Unfortunately, I mean, actually, I was just kind of hit with the news at about 5 p.m. And this is Mountain Time. So I was hit with the news fairly late. I was just contacted by one of the other writers, and they're like, "Hey, what's going on?" I looked at his page, and his mom, gave a little rundown of what happened, and it's unfortunate because he had a 7-8-year-old daughter, I believe, and a lot of people have posted, talk about how talented he was, but I guess he just left the world too soon.
Well, that just goes to show you no matter how bad you think you've got it, there's always somebody that has it worse. So maybe be nice to everybody all the time instead of being mean. Unless they're Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton, because they're assholes. But, all right. So make sure you check out The Grueling Truth on iHeart, TuneIn, Google Play. What am I missing here? iTunes. Pretty much anywhere you find podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for Jeremiah Preisser, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.